You are listening to Red Team Radio.
Today I have Sle3p with me, who has been red teaming for almost a decade now. He is an internal red teamer. He started his life as a consultant, and we're going to dive deep into some of those opinions of, consulting for red teaming versus internal red teamers. He is the developer of the Sle3p Stick, which we'll talk about in this episode as well. And he's flown out here all from the other side of the coast.
Yep.
Appreciate you coming out.
Happy to do it.
Yeah. So kind of already hit on it. You were a consultant in the beginning doing red teaming items, and then you switched over to internal red teaming, and you have some particular feelings on that.
Yeah. So I'm glad I just to go through how this all happened. Started hanging around people who do this sort of thing when I was about 14. Over the years, I caught the eye as someone who's sort of mentored me, through the years. And then when I graduated college, he said, "You work for me now." And that's how I got my first gig doing pen testing and red teaming as a consultant. I'm glad I started my career as a consultant because that, hustle of every 2 weeks, it's a new environment, getting exposed to a lot of different types of things. That was good for me, but I eventually got burnt out from the way consulting in security is going and decided that I was much happier doing internal red teaming for first for a Fortune 5 company. Did that for about 4 or 5 years, and now I am doing internal red teaming for another large tech company. And the differences are technically are different in ways I didn't think they would. So when you're doing internal red teaming, you have relationships with the SOC, you have relationships with threat intel and all these other security orgs. So you get to do things like treat engagements not as individual engagements, but part of a wider campaign. So at my last employer, our threat intel team assigned a code name to us and tracked us the way they would any other threat actor. So and it's also very rewarding to see that the security posture of the org matures over time. When you're a consultant, you say, "Here's the report, check please," and come back maybe for a retest. But when you're an internal red teamer, you get to see how things change over time and say, wow, things are remarkably better than when I started here, and that's very rewarding.
And that also gives you the ability to become that advanced persistent threat.
Yeah.
Where in consulting, you're a threat actor, but you can't be persistent, or a lot of companies don't hire internal or not internal, but consultancies to do long-term red team projects against them, right? They'll do point-in-time pen tests. Yeah. And you might be doing recurring work as a consultant on pen tests, but it in itself is you're not doing recurring work as a long-term red team.
Exactly.
Right? So, because it's just super expensive, right? There's a lot of, it becomes way cheaper to start having your own internal red team.
Yeah.
So.
And you can, as an internal red team, you can sort of do things that aren't necessarily red teaming, but still valuable, do design reviews, before something gets deployed, you can say, hey, this isn't a good idea.
Right.
And, you can save your employer a lot of time and money that way.
Yeah. And, I feel more companies are getting better at including security in the development process.
Yeah.
I'm saying better than not great, but better.
Yeah.
Instead of, we already deployed this product. It's been live for 5 years. I guess we should have security look at it, right?
Yeah.
Which I felt even in 2010, that's how a lot of stuff was, right? It was our product's already live. It's been live for a long time. Sure, maybe we should do a pen test against it.
Yeah.
And now the other aspect of that is the aspect I like to bring up when it comes to consultancies is you have that brain drain problem.
Yeah.
Right, where on an internal red team, you don't have that brain drain problem.
Yeah. Well, less so.
Well, yeah, less until you'll switch a job or something like that, or you're like some of these other tech companies right now, and they just lay off the entire red team.
Yeah, I have a few friends that's happened to. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I can name 3 companies right now that are Fortune 50 that laid off their entire red team.
Yeah,
and then they're just And each team was, 5 to 10 members,
Yeah.
right? Some companies had 2 red teams and stuff like that. Some companies have a billion red teams.
Yeah.
I know your previous employer.
They had too many.
Yeah, we would get calls from people and they're like, yeah, we're the red team for them. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And then a few months later, they'd be wanting to do training.
Yeah.
And then we'd be like, oh, yeah, hey, do you work with these people? Because
Who?
they called us
Yeah.
and they said they're the red team for that
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're the red team.
Yeah, there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen there.
Yeah. So I think we've identified it was like 5 red teams at that company that called and were saying that they're red. It's essentially every product that company had its own red team.
Yeah.
It felt like so. But with that brain drain problem, right? It's definitely going to be present very quickly if you're using a consultancy,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah. We'll send emails after you stop paying us, but we're not going to send too many emails, and we're not going to spend weeks worth of time doing free stuff for you, right?
And also, as some of the consultancies I was at had products and services other than
consulting,
other than offensive security. And I left one company because I was asked to lie on a report to drum up sales.
Oh, damn.
And I'm like, not only am I not doing that, I'm screenshotting you asking me to do that, and I'm gone.
Yeah.
It's I have integrity. That's not something I'm going to do.
Yeah. Did you print that out and frame it?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Well, it's kept in a safe.
I would print out 2 copies and have one just framed in the background so everyone could see it on Zoom
I
meetings.
I only kept it for CYA.
Yeah, of course.
But stuff like that is why I'm not going back to consulting. And also just the internal red team, you have more agency to set schedules, so it's a much less stressful life.
Yeah. It definitely is, right? And even though I was consulting, because at one time we were working
at the same employer.
at the same company.
I was
right?
consulting, you were internal then.
Yeah.
Funny how that sort of flipped.
Yeah, well, technically I was consulting for them too, right?
Yeah.
It was just long-term consulting, right? So I was there 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
For 18 months, right? Which was our contract that we agreed to.
Yeah.
And which was great when I was starting my company, right? They were my first client, the only client I can name by name.
Yeah.
But we were able to act like an internal red team, right? My whole point of being there was to help build their internal red team.
Yeah.
So that was why I was consulted there to help be part of the red team for a while, get that started up, and then let them have their own red team after that.
And something I've seen a lot of companies run into when they decide we want to build an internal red team, they either think you just hire some people and let them loose, or sometimes if the people who are in charge of building that internal red team, they might have a consulting background, but they don't always appreciate the difference between building an internal red team practice versus consulting. Because when you're building an internal red team, there's more of an emphasis on building relationships with the blue team, with other orgs in the company.
Yep.
Because you can it's a much less adversarial relationship with the blue team and threat intel as an internal red team than is with a consultant. Because yes, you're trying to challenge them, but at the end of the day, they're still your friends.
Right, and you're both playing for the same team.
Yeah.
Right. And I would totally agree with that. Because as a consultant, you have limited visibility into things, right?
Yeah.
You're told, hey, we want to test this.
Yeah.
And you are you can dictate how some of that stuff goes, but you miss a lot of the internal, hey, we should maybe not look at that right now. We should look at this instead.
Yeah.
This would provide more, benefit to the overall security posture of the organization. And you can sometimes identify that as an external consultant, but it's less likely than if you're internal.
Yeah.
And then you're not building those deep relationships with those other business, the other business units or the stakeholders, right? Because all you are is they have a product or they have something internal that they need to get through security, and you're that checkbox for them, right? So they don't actually, they're like, I don't want to secure all this stuff. I just want to get past my little checkbox exam I have to do so we can push this to prod.
Yeah, you can get more work done as an internal red teamer with a carrot than a stick too.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
and that was one of the things, like at Cisco, like we would go and we would hang out with the other business units.
Yeah.
And we'd go get dinner or lunch with them. We'd go get drinks with them if that's what they did, or get coffee with them, and build that internal relationship so that when they actually would think, and this is what we wanted people to start coming to that red team, the internal Cisco red team, to not just when they needed something done, but when they thought something was a little off, right? And I'm not talking about reporting phishing emails to us. I'm talking about like, hey, we're kind of doing this thing. It's a little janky. We need to push it through really quickly. Could you just look at this, like, and tell me if I'm crazy or if you think there's something there. And if you think there's something there, then we'll do, an engagement with you all. Yeah. And that was really awesome to be able to have that relationship with the internal folks and just be able to help them. Yeah. Whenever they felt something was like, being pushed through a little too quickly.
Yeah. There were times at my last employer where we were able to do that kind of review and prevent a dumpster fire before it caught fire. Mm-hmm. There were other times where we'd actually be asked to consult on IR.
Yeah.
Because we could say interesting that the threat actor did this. I wonder if they also did this. And then the ER people say, oh, that's interesting. Let me check. I'm like, yep, you were right. And, you can sort of give that adversarial insight to an IR or a threat intel project.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've done that with clients before where they're like, hey, we want to hire you for an IR project. And I tell them, like, I don't really do IR, right? Like, I don't want to look forward to my clients getting hacked, right? Yeah. But if you like money, IR is the answer. Oh my gosh, I see like the invoices that they're sending to these other consultancies that do IR and DR, and I'm just like, wow, okay.
I think that's more of a sign about how bad security is overall than anything else. If there's that much of a demand for IR consultants,
right?
That probably means things are pretty bad.
Yeah. It's I mean, they got job security, right?
Well, companies job insecurity is kind of.
Well, yeah. The clients got insecurity.
Yeah.
They got the security.
Yeah.
But we've been there, and they're like, hey, can you like help our blue team do like the initial investigations while the other IR team is coming in here, installing their sensors and doing all that stuff. Yeah. And we're always happy to do that. But it provides them like, oh, this is what got compromised, and then we had I remember this one CISO. He was like, so this was APT, right? And I was like, no. And he was like, but it was from Asia. I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. Looks like it came from Asia, right? Can't give you 100% on that, but it looks like it came from Asia, right? We're about 90% sure on that. But this is just organized crime. Yeah. You just had to unpatch, PeopleSoft box out on the internet. That's how they got in, right? And they're just like, right, but we're a Fortune 100 company, so it was probably APT. And I was like,
was it though?
It was not. This is not APT. And the CISO was new. It was like he was fairly new. He was like in there for a few months, and I'm just like, what is up with him like wanting this to be APT? Like, just admit that you had a unsecure box that you didn't know about, and then just take the slap on the wrist. They're not going to fire you, right? You still got 12 months into your 18-month plan that they're going to keep you for, okay? So just let them know, yep, hey, this was missed. All right, like we're going to be working on this type of stuff to get asset inventory in place. But he was like pushing, like in all the meetings I was in with him, he was like, yeah, we could be APT. Definitely signs of APT were there. I was just like, no, there are no signs of APT here.
Yeah. And an advantage as a red teamer for collaborating with IR and threat intel and stuff is you can then tailor the TTPs you use as a red teamer to better emulate different threats, because like you actually have that raw data to work with.
Right.
And like on the physical side, threat intel is much less robust than it is with digital.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So like the closest that I've had is like just like try and convince local police departments to share police reports with me. And
Mm-hmm.
LexisNexis has this nice free map where you can see crime reports in an area.
Only if they report it, though.
Yeah, only
Not
if they report it.
not every place reports it.
Yeah,
So
because there's not the breach disclosure requirements with
Right.
physical as there is with digital.
Yeah.
But it's a lot harder to do threat intel with physical, and like I've had to join like mailing lists for different physical security blue team like publications to
Mhm.
scrape what little threat intel there is, and
yeah,
it's a lot harder.
it is. And then if you, as a red teamer, let's say you're an internal red teamer and their physical security team is not used to the process, or you're new,
Yeah.
like the red team is new,
Yeah.
and you're like, hey, like, tell me what type of threats you guys run into, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of physical security guys will not think about threats that they could run into. They're just like, oh yeah, people
Someone stole paper clips.
yeah, or they like the most extreme one I heard is what we're worried about is people taking trucks and ramming it into the first floor of our buildings to then steal all these servers. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, right, but what about like other insider threats, other problems that you guys have? And
Yeah.
like we don't even manage that. We're having a hard enough time managing, like the random homeless that is wandering into our lobby
Yeah.
that then is getting past the lobby desk because someone is out at lunch and we don't have
Yeah.
multiple staff there or something like
Yeah.
that. And I was just like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
So
So this is unpopular opinion of mine, but I think red teamers need to start pivoting away from testing office locations to logistical and manufacturing locations.
I don't think that is now are you saying they will never do an office test,
Well,
or
I'm saying the focus needs to change to
Yeah.
pivot
Mhm.
because with things like a lot of companies aren't returning to the office. You've got things like zero trust networking and stuff that are sort of like making it harder to squeeze juice from compromising a physical office.
Right, yeah.
Like that's getting that like there's less and less juice from that. But on the flip side, if your company uh sells or manufactures anything, they have to store their inventory somewhere. And cargo theft, like specifically warehouse burglar gangs, are very high skill resources threat actors, and they work on commission. So like you'll get like a black market broker who says, "Hey, I have a market for XYZ consumer good in quantity overseas." He'll tell a gang of warehouse burglars, "Get me large quantities of this product." And they'll spend months doing OSINT and on-site recon to find the best place to steal this product. And they're good enough at what they do, a lot of these gangs, where they'll go in on a Friday night, clean out the warehouse over the weekend, and by Tuesday, all those goods are on a ship to an overseas market.
Yeah.
They're the perfect example of high skill, low resource threat actors.
Yeah.
I heard one story where after a warehouse got burglarized, the warehouse manager was watching the burglary from CCTV footage, and he remarked that the burglars operated the forklifts better than his actual employees. So like these are very skilled threat actors that they're it's warehouse burglary has become an epidemic in the United States. It's a huge problem. And I think we as red teamers have been sort of negligent about emulating that threat.
Well, and a lot of times red teamers, what they want to emulate is they want to emulate like this state actor.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
it's just like, right. But is your company even ready for that level
Yeah.
of threat actor simulation?
if
or
you're
anything
worried,
like that?
like if a nation state's not going to take the risk of physically deploying someone to break into a facility if they can get in at a network level.
Right. Well, and what they're going to do anyways, they're just going to have someone be an employee of
Get
that
George
company.
to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Get
So
George to do
they
it.
either have someone that they compromise, or they have just one of their regular people that they
Yeah.
have. Like one of the things a lot of people don't. I remember I was giving this briefing to this Fortune 25 company, and they're like, "How do real threat actors act?" And I was just like, "Well, they're going to get someone hired here."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Because you're going to give them a badge, a laptop, and VPN access. So like I already got a lot of things that I would need to get if I'm trying to do a red teamer. And they're like, okay, so should we not hire like foreign nationals? And I was like, well, no, that's not going to be your thing because the problem with
they'll just
just
find a clean skin.
well, a lot of times what you see is you have like tourism births, right?
Yeah.
That happen 25 years ago. Those people are American citizens still.
Yeah.
They've lived in America for like maybe 5 months of their life.
Yeah.
They've been over in the country that they've been at, and then they've been, ever since they turned 11, right? They're being groomed to be this type of threat actor, right?
Yeah.
A sleeper cell type of person.
And
And I'm not saying that's widespread everywhere. I'm saying
Yeah.
that is a reality that companies are realizing now, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be like no foreign nationals.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, there's lots of talented foreign nationals. Why would you limit your
Yeah.
employee pool to just, that? So it is something to think about. But I think your warehouse idea, I think looking past, looking more into the actual threats that companies are facing instead of just APT is, I don't find it controversial at all.
Might be some people in the comments.
Yeah. Okay. If you think it's controversial, like post it in the comments, I guess, and let's hash this out.
Yeah.
Because it makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great move for companies to start looking into that. And red teams to understand that their threat actor is not always going to be that person.
Yeah, it's not
that
always
is a
about
state
data.
actor.
It's not
Right.
always about data.
Right. So, and that's the other thing is, understanding what that company's threat actors really are. And I think that brings me up to a point. So going to this client, they had all these grand plans for everything that they wanted to do, right? And one of those plans included having a internal red team. And I was just like, right, but you're not ready to have like a full-time internal red team yet.
Yeah.
You have all these other problems that you have to look at, all these other things you have to work through.
Yeah.
You're just going to be spending money finding more problems that you already have a backlog.
Yeah.
Right? Like hire more blue teamers right now, hire more security engineers, security architects to start working and chugging through your backlog of stuff that's already going to take 5 years to get through.
And this is probably also going to be another comment that's going to get comments on this video, but most orgs have more of a need for pen testers than red teamers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't have the ability to detect and respond to intrusion, you don't need a red team. Like if you don't have someone who's able to detect and respond to events, you do not need a red team. You need pen tests to and even if you do have someone a SOC who can detect and respond, you need to get all this low-hanging fruit identified and remediated before you bring in a red team.
Yeah. No, I agree totally with that. It is and some red teamers are like, "Oh, what you're ruining." Like I could see some of the comments right now, right? Is like, "Oh, you're ruining the market," or like, companies are gonna hear this and they're gonna be like, "Oh, we don't need red teamers," and then it's gonna be harder to get jobs as red teamers. To which I say, like, right, but you don't want to be on a red team in a company that doesn't need a red team yet.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be terrible. Because you're going to start as a red teamers, and then what you're actually going to start doing is you're going to be doing vuln management and web app pen testing, where you're just like, I thought I was going to be doing, like, the web app pen testing is part of red teaming sometimes, but I thought I also was going to be doing social engineering, physical entry, dismantling this organization step by step, not trying to run a whole bunch of different variations of attacks against this web app to see if I can get, cross-site scripting done or something.
Though something I'm glad that I've had a kind of varied career is like I can throw down with a web app. I can throw down with a network if I have to.
Yeah.
But even though my bread and butter is, physical entry, I can do that stuff if I have to. And it sort of benefits doing physical entry because like if I get into a networking closet, I can affect impact on that networking closet. If I have to if through OSINT I identify that, say, their Linell instance is facing the internet, I can compromise that Linell instance from the internet. So, like, I think it's very, like, I'm very much of the opinion that as a red teamer, you should have 3 or 4 areas you really focus on, but you should have basic experience in as many areas as you can, because you never know what you're going to run into. You're never going to know what you're going to have a need to compromise.
Well, and you're going to have the ability. I mean, those digital skills are going to transfer into the
Yeah.
physical space as well. But you're also going to have the ability to be more useful to the organization.
Exactly.
So you want to make sure that you are that resource that they can count on, not just on doing really good on physical or social engineering, but can also do digital. I personally also believe that every red teamer needs to be able to break into a building, break into the network, get what they need to get, right? There is a place for very specialized items, but you should be able to do all three. And you can be an expert at one of them, but like you were saying, you need to have competencies in the others.
Exactly.
Right? So if just in case, someone gets sick, right?
Yeah.
And you have a tight time frame on an engagement,
Yeah.
like you can fill in for that position for making that physical entry.
Yeah.
And then, but your specialty is like hardcore reverse engineering, network dismantling, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that is, in my opinion, and for the red teamers that I hire and the red teamers that I have help other companies hire. So when they're building their own internal red team, every red teamer has to be able to do all three, right? They can be an expert in one, but they have to be competent enough to be able to return results, even if they're the only one on a particular project.
Yeah. And, I don't look or sound like someone who does physical entry. Like when people think of someone who does physical entry, they don't think of a nerdy guy like me. And I've sort of made a career out of that. I had one instance where I had never spoken with my point of contact at the client on the phone, never met him in person. So I break in to the facility and I'm like, okay, they just wanted to see that I could break in. That was it. Like they didn't want proof of impact or anything. So I walk up to my client and I'm about to say, hi, I'm the red team. And but before I could say anything, he hands me his laptop and is like, here's what's wrong with it. And I'm like, thanks, but I don't think you want to hand me your laptop.
Yeah. Too bad you didn't have to do any,
that
proof
would have
of
been
impact.
perfect.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'll be back in an hour.
That's right. Can I have your creds just to make sure it works on your account?
Yeah. So but I think something that also needs to happen with the industry is there needs to be a more diverse sources of talent. Because most people who do red teaming now, they either come from government background, which is fine and has its place, or they come, like I did from the hacker community and sort of transitioned into physical. But I think there's a need to have people who have different approaches and sources of knowledge in this industry, because otherwise it's going to stagnate.
Yeah, well, that's the question that I get actually from individuals when they're like, "Oh, I want to be a red teamer, but I don't have that pedigree of being a hacker or a pen tester for like the last 10 years or something like that." I'm just like, okay, but you don't you need to learn how to hack, yes, but you don't need to have that background for 10 years to be successful in red teaming, right? I get asked a lot also like, "Oh, what did you go to university to?" Or like, where did you go for, or what did you go for, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I dropped out of university, so like, let's just get that clear. But my first declared major that I spent most of my time doing in university was political science.
Yeah.
Right. It was not, information assurance. That was like a sub thing that I was doing, and it only changed at the very end because I was told, hey, you're not going to get a job at these agencies doing this type of things, because that's what I wanted to do when I graduated college, is work for, one of the intel groups here in the U.S. You're not going to get a job as that unless you come with a technical degree. So my last year of uni, I switched over to, information assurance or something like computer security or something like that, right? But it was just like, okay, but all my stuff, I was taking those 300 level poli-sci classes. I took more poli-sci classes than I did computer courses.
So I work with a lot of people who come from government backgrounds, and a lot of them are very effective red teamers, but something I've noticed with some people that come from a government background is they might have been very effective in that environment with all the resources that come from state backing, but in the private sector, you don't have that. You have to be very scrappy. You have to scramble to get what resources you can from wherever you can. And, a lot, like I said, a lot of the people who come from that background, they can do that, but not all of them can.
Right.
And, like there's a need. I think there's an urgent need in this industry to sort of get an influx of outside talent
Hmm.
because like I think we're all starting to get caught in an echo chamber as far as how we approach problems.
Yeah. And especially like going on that government side, when I do stuff with RF, right?
Yeah.
And people tell me like, oh yeah, my background's in signals intelligence and electronic warfare, which is also what I tell people my background was in, right?
Right.
But they were in the military doing it. I was never in the military.
Yeah.
When I'm saying I did it, it's because I built the platforms and the algorithms that they're using. When they say they're doing it, it's because they're using the
They were
tools that
pressing
I
a
built.
button.
Yeah.
They were
And
pressing a button.
and they're just like, oh yeah, we identified this waveform. Yeah, but the program identified it for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I know I wrote that identified program for
Yeah.
it. And then what you did is you went through your little flip book and you selected options 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yes, you did do signals, right? You're not a complete idiot, or you did SIGINT, but at the same time, you don't have that capability to develop that tooling.
Yeah.
If I needed you to build a brand new box right now, and I gave you some random SCR, a laptop, and whatever code base that you wanted, you're gonna have a struggle putting that together
So, like,
because it doesn't have the word Harris on it, and it's already built for you, right?
Yeah. So I think for red teaming, especially now more than ever, having the ability to make your own tools is essential.
Oh, 100%.
And that's why I made the Sle3p Stick and a few other tools. For those of you who don't know, the Sle3p Stick is a modular and concealable under the door tool me and 3 of my design partners made, where instead of having one under the door tool that's this giant cumbersome thing you have to fold up, and I think we've all almost lost eyes over the
Oh yeah,
years under
yeah.
with
The
a
K22 is very dangerous.
yeah, and it's hard to conceal. So I said, this is stupid. I think I can do something better. So
Mhm.
then I sat down with 3 of my friends, and one of whom is a very gifted machinist, like one of the best machinists I've ever encountered. We sat down for a few years. We designed a very innovative joint design that we actually got patented. And you can just, in the dark, in under a minute, you can assemble this tool, slide it under the door, and have it open in under a minute. And there's heads for crash bars, lever handles, doorknobs. We have a few other ideas for heads that I can't talk about. But this is, I designed this tool because, I had a need for it. I needed an under the door tool that was flexible and that you could actually use in the field. I designed a few other tools for the same reason, and we're looking into getting some of these tools made in quantity and sold. But I didn't design them because I wanted to make money. I designed these tools because I had a need for them, and
Mhm.
if other red teamers can benefit from them, I'll make them available.
Yeah.
But and designing the Sle3p Stick and the other tools wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I'm a big believer that don't assume you can't do something until you try and do it, because usually doing something is not as hard to do as you think going in. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, but it's almost never as hard as you think it will be. So, just try it. Don't assume you can't do it. Don't assume it's impossible until you try it yourself.
Yeah. No, and I remember, I think it was a few years ago now when you,
I showed you 1.0 with the really
yeah,
janky,
well,
threaded rods.
yeah. It was like
that,
the rifle cleaning kit
Yeah,
thing or something like
that was
that.
the first version, and so it came a long way from that. Now we have a really nice joint design, because the problem with threaded rod is after you apply the torque to open the door with the threaded rod, the threads get so tight that to disassemble it, you need a handheld vise because it got so stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So we sat down, and because that's the problem with a modular under the door tool. The hardest part is the joint design. You need a joint that's both quick and easy to assemble, but also can hold a big load.
Yeah, it's robust. Yeah.
So when we did stress testing on our joint design, the joint didn't break, the weld did.
Oh, okay.
That's how strong the joint design we came up with. And there's I'm about to test what should be the final version of the joint design, and it's really nice now.
Cool.
It's a really, like, literally you just slide it in, set a set screw, it's good to go. Like, it's
And you're saying you can build this in under a minute in the dark?
well, in under a minute, I can assemble it and have the door open.
Right. Oh, okay. Nice.
That's including opening
Okay.
time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Opening time should only take 8 seconds or less, though.
Well, it's about like
I know.
it's and something I'm also looking into is and this I'm only gonna make available for special customers, but coding that makes it less visible on a night vision camera. So if there's a camera on the other side of the door, they'll be less likely to see it fiddling about on the other side.
Yeah, I definitely have looked at still I use the K22, right? The traditional under the door tool that everyone thinks about.
Yeah.
And I love that thing. And how I fold it up, still a loop, right? But I put it in the laptop section of where my backpack is, so it looks like a frame. But I've definitely asked clients after I've made entry or like my team's made entry into buildings. I was just like, can you show me like the video on the other side of that particular door, right? And a lot of times for us, I like making entry during the daytime, so it's fully lit, right? We don't have to wear it. IR is not being turned on by the cameras, right? But it is funny to see, like, you see this little thin, item that glimmers, and then it goes up and it just slides over, and it's just like, that looks super sus.
So speaking of cameras and detection, I think the future of physical security is going to be in AI. And I know there's going to be people in the comments who are going to be like, oh, AI. But like with I think, and like we're starting to see this already happen, I think traditional motion sensors are going to be replaced with cameras hooked up to an AI model to detect suspicious behavior.
Yeah.
Because when you have like a traditional microwave or PIR sensor, like motion sensor, all it does is trip a dry contact to say something moved in the protected area. And I think at one point the FBI did a study that found like something like 93% of burglar alarm calls were false alarms. Because like a bird went by the window or something stupid like that.
Or an insect or
something stupid like that. And that's why and threat actors know this. Like there was in the 90s a rather famous theft from an art gallery in, I think it was Sicily. Caravaggio's Nativity was stolen. And what he did was he went in right before closing time, hid behind a curtain, waited for the museum to close, and in the middle of the night, he tripped the motion sensor and then hide. And he did this like 100 times. And by like the 100th time, the security guards stopped checking. And that's when he stole the painting.
Yeah, that's good.
So
alarm fatigue is real. Yeah.
And I think AI can go a long way to reducing that problem. Because like there are systems out there where like the AI model will be robust enough to say like, hey, someone pulled a gun out of their pocket. Let's give a higher priority alarm alert than someone's lurking by the fence.
Yep.
So like you can not only just detect specific behaviors, but for those detections you can assign priority.
Well, and with that, I mean, we're going to be integrating. So there's a thing called the RF persona, right? So your RF persona is all your digital devices that you keep on you. So your smartwatch, your
Incon, and
your iPhone, your AirPods, all these different RF signatures are then tied to you.
Yeah.
Right, and that's going to be tied into the camera systems. That then is going to be used for motion detection instead of simple motion detection, right? And then it will also allow them to, kind of go and give them that gated community feel where we can set up geofences in a building.
Yeah.
And if you walk through, even if you tailgate, right, and they don't have any anti-tailgating or somehow you're able to defeat, the AI camera that detects you tailgating, or the machine learning camera that detects you doing that, you still are being picked up because you're RF persona, right? So, and I 100%, that's the future of where security products are going to go. I worked for a company where that was their product that they did, right? And it was, I still believe it's going to be used heavily in physical security, more and more.
Yeah, because, like, we as a species, for, like, thousands of years have been making physical security products, like
Right.
going back to like ancient Mesopotamia.
Right.
And I think we've come a long way, but I think we still have a very long way to go. And I'm not even convinced we'll ever solve this problem. I don't think it's a solvable problem.
Well, we're always going to find ways to defeat it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, like,
So.
what I love about physical security is it's a puzzle. However, the difference from most puzzles is this is a puzzle specifically designed not to be solvable.
Right.
And, that's why how I get my satisfaction from this is saying, yeah, I did solve this puzzle they thought I couldn't solve. And that's where I get my satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think when it comes to alarm systems, old school alarm systems, the Romans had it right with the geese.
Yeah.
Right.
They're very unpleasant animals.
They are. Yeah.
Like, Canadian geese are the worst. Canadian people, very nice.
Yep,
Very nice people. They're geese, not so
What
much.
happened? What happened? It's because they go down to Arizona and they spend the winter time there, right? Like that's what happened with Canadian geese.
Yeah.
I know they used to be in my backyard all the time when I lived in Arizona.
Where I am too. Like, there's a lot of geese.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're closer to the border than I was. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was closer to a different border.
Yeah. But I think AI is going to be a defining advancement in physical security because we're going to eventually get past having to rely on human guards that are not paid well enough where we can expect them to do their job well.
Right. Well, and machine learning or what people are just, the buzzword is AI and everything.
We used to call it if statements.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, that's been in some of the processes for cameras, but a lot of companies just don't use it.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you were to get something, with Software House, they had this type of stuff already in there. I think, what is it called? Milestone or Millstone?
Milestone,
yeah, they have these features in there, but a lot of companies just aren't enabling them in their setups, or they just don't have the time to support that, or do the testing on it to see if it does what it needs.
And also, like, they need a library of known bad behavior to act on. And that's, I think, the role red teamers are going to play with...
Oh, we're going to be the data set?
Yeah, like creating, helping create detections. Like, it's like purple teaming, but for physical security, helping create these detections. And I think that and the eventual migration to zero trust, where the physical security perimeter gets decoupled from the network security perimeter. These are the things I think that we as red teamers are going to have to adapt to.
Oh, 100%.
And, this is, and like, I think a lot of people who do red teaming right now, and again, this is going to get some comments, but I think a lot of us are not really willing to make that adaptation yet. Like, I talk to a lot of people in the industry who are like, oh yeah, just all you need is an R90 and a Raspberry Pi and you can pwn the network. And, those days are numbered.
Well, I mean...
You have to be a lot more tactical in how you turn physical access into network access than it used to be.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would be hopeful that red teamers would want to change, right? Like this is just, it sounds exciting to me, right? Like when clients started to use ground-based radar, right? It was like, okay, cool. So now we got to defeat that, right? So now we're going to be attacking it with our software-defined radios and these up converters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a problem with that, but you think red teamers are just not going to want to do more and more of that stuff?
I think a lot of the red teamers I talk to aren't as good at following the trends of the blue team side of physical security as we should be.
Well, and I think that's one very helpful thing with like doing purple teaming.
Yeah.
Is you see what that blue team is doing, you see the direction that they want to go. Look at your company's look at the org chart, figure out who are the, you got your CISO, but then figure out there are two right-hand, individuals that they're always counting on, and figure out what their roadmap is for the organization because they're doing the strategy stuff, and then adapt your particular, mindset for red teaming to fit that as well, and be able to use the future technologies that they're going to be doing. Because, you're not... Okay. When I think about it, there are some people I think about, but I don't really consider them red teamers. I consider them more like
Social engineers.
yeah, like social engineers, right? That are less willing to adapt to items,
Yeah.
right? And if you throw in something like two-factor, it trips them up a ton, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, two-factor is just a part of making entry now,
Yeah.
right? Getting around two-factor. They might have a CyberArk set up in their organization. Abusing features and stuff within CyberArk is also part of normal entry in today's age.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure, yeah, I mean, you've probably talked to more people about that. I just, around the subject of evolving, I just always see red teaming as like you have to evolve.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, and this is something I didn't appreciate, I really started doing this professionally, is how much time you have to spend not just learning new skills, but maintaining the skills you already have.
Yeah.
And maintaining the capabilities you had previously.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I end up reading 2 books a week. I end up spending several hours a day just like, I have a calendar to track what skills I need to practice each day to maintain, and like,
especially on the physical side, they are extremely perishable, right? So like, I'm not doing physical entry every single day, right? I'm doing a lot of working with higher ups, working with boards and stuff like that, but I still like doing the physical entry stuff. And when I am doing that, I have to ramp up, 2 weeks beforehand on my practice and stuff like that, because it is a perishable skill.
Yeah. My wife wasn't thrilled that I had to set up an obstacle course with motion sensors and doors in our basement. She's like, at first I thought your job was cool. Now I just see it's just you crawling slowly and poking things with metal.
That's right. That's right. You didn't have her watch Sneakers before you
No, we
proposed
did,
to her?
but even
Okay.
Sneakers makes it look more exciting than like what we actually do.
They had the motion detector system in the house.
Like I like to equate physical red teaming a lot like sitting in the ER waiting room at the hospital. You fill out paperwork, you do some people watching, you sit around, you wait a lot, and maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, you get a shot of adrenaline.
Okay.
Like there's a lot of boring.
It's like surveillance.
Yeah, like boring, like surveillance, like a lot of paperwork that goes into before you can do the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first started my career, I was like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, right out of college. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be, breaking into night every night and like, hacking all the things. I'm like, wow, it's a lot of meetings and paperwork.
Yeah, that's right. Strategy and especially after you do an engagement. Yeah, breaking in every single day and breaking in at night, right? It'd be like, yeah, this is different thing. There's only one time where I remember we were breaking in every day, and it was because a client had lunch that was catered in every single day. So we'd start our work day, and we'd be there for many hours afterwards. But we'd start our work day right at like 11:30, right when lunch was being brought in. We'd go eat lunch with the team, and we did this for months.
Right.
Every day we'd go in, break in, and then we'd sit on their network because we were just trying to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Trying to push. We were pushing code. They wanted us to push code to production.
That's a fun objective.
It was, yeah. So we added a logging feature, and we actually, when we added it, a developer checked the code, and they added like some semicolon in there, and they're just like, "Oh, hey, you didn't put this semicolon in there. I added it." And Royal was just like, "You don't need to. God, this guy's a junior. You don't need to do that. It's like so terrible." But he told the person that we broke. We had the account of one of the developers, and we pushed the code as his account. And the guy's like, "I didn't write that code." And then there was like a whole team chat on that was going on, and people were just like, "Oh, you probably forgot that you wrote that code." And it's like, I forget that I write code all the time. And like we've compromised all these developers' accounts, so we're watching them chat.
Yeah.
And they're chatting through Spark. So now you know where it was at. And
only one place uses Spark.
and they they were going, and one person out of this whole sea of developers said, "Bro, you probably got hacked." And everyone was just like, "No, no," like downplaying it. I was just like, "Oh man," like, yeah, this guy's so. And I thought the gig was up, right? I thought I was like, "Oh, damn it." Okay, so we've been here for a few months, and we've compromised the entire network. We can compromise a ton of stuff. We got all this great stuff, and now someone knows that someone's been hacked. But everyone, it was like literally after that, it was like 10 minutes of everyone just bagging on that person, be like, they didn't get hacked. You're so dumb. Like, why would you think that? I was just like, oh man, we're gonna make this guy the savior at the end of the project.
Yeah. The inverse of that, I did an engagement where we left a leave behind device. We got in, did what we had to do, and left. But before we could retrieve the leave behind device, security found it.
Oh.
And this is where it got messy. This led to a series of events where we found out that the guy who engaged us to test this facility didn't tell any of the people he told engaged us to test this facility. People got mad. This led to this whole internal dumpster fire where, like, we just spent days sitting around in a hotel room in a holding pattern, figuring out if if the project is still go, and like as an internal red teamer, normally you just assume that like the stakeholder who engages you actually had, like, as a consultant, I would always do oaths and verify that like we had authority to test this and like do our due diligence there. But like as an internal red teamer, you assume that like if a manager says, "Hey, can you test this for us?" you assume that they actually have the authority.
Right, yeah.
And like we actually told him, like, "Hey, I asked him in the kickoff call, I'm like, is there any internal approval you need or anything like that?" He's like, "Nope." I'm like, oh, so you lied to me.
Yeah.
And like they didn't catch us, but like they found the leave behind device, and that got
Then it became a escalation with everything. They're like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we're being hacked by the APT."
So what got interesting is like because we were doing night entry, we informed local police that we were doing this just for safety, because like we didn't want to get chased by dogs in the night or anything. And the guy at local PD we contacted, he's like, "Okay, I'll put in a prim hazard, like a note in their system." He forgot to do that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So then like they called police, like the facility called the cops, and like they took the leave behind device was a camera. And they're like, "Well, the police are like, sorry, it was on it was technically on the easement on your property, so we're not going to do anything." So then they said the cops, "Well, we don't want it." He's like, the cops are like, "Fine, we'll destroy it." And I lost hidden camera.
Oh
that
man.
way.
Oh man.
Well,
was it a good one at least?
No.
Oh, okay.
Probably why I got caught.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, so that brings up a few questions actually. That story, which I really like. Do you prefer nighttime or daytime entry?
It depends. If it's a facility where I think, like, if it's a facility somewhere where I have to worry about armed guards, or like if there's any sort of like added physical risk to night entry, I'll try and avoid it, just because there are no respawns in real life.
Right. Yeah.
So like, but if the threat model fits night entry, I think it's doable, I prefer it.
Okay.
But more often than not, it's easier to go in during the day.
Yeah, I love day entry myself, right? Because employees are supposed to be there at that time, right? And you are looking like a regular employee.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're looking like a regular employee,
or at least someone who's supposed to be there.
Right. Yeah. As red teamers, we're not supposed to wear, airsoft vests when we're making entry.
I know who you're talking about.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that, you don't wear tactical vests when you're trying to go and make entry.
Yeah.
Also, hopping a fence, I guess, is a valid attack vector, but, not something that you have to do every single day.
Yeah.
But it you just look like a regular employee. You're there.
Yeah.
If it's a much nicer company, they cater lunch, right?
Yeah. But generally I agree. But, there are some facilities and some objectives
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, especially if you're talking about things like, cargo theft, like warehouse burglary, like I was talking about earlier.
Yep.
Like, it's a lot harder to do that during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you look at actual crime stats, most break-ins happen when the facility is not occupied.
Yeah, and well, now I'm not saying don't do night entry.
Yeah, no,
I'm saying
yeah.
my preference is daytime.
Yeah.
Right. Every project usually you have a day component and a night
Yeah,
component.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
but my first time making entry, I want to try to do it during the middle of the day.
Yeah, and I'm never going to do nighttime entry unless if I scoped it out during the day.
Right. Yeah. You have to do your surveillance, right? You have to
Yeah.
do all that stuff.
Like-
And even daytime entry, we have to do our surveillance, right?
Yeah.
So,
And something I think is also essential is before you go on site, you for surveillance, you need to do an OSINT workup.
oh, yeah. 100%.
And like, I don't think OSINT should replace physical surveillance. I think OSINT should inform physical surveillance. When you're doing OSINT, you want to create a list of questions you want answered by on-site recon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to say, like, hey, from social media posts and satellite imagery, I think there's this entry point and this on the perimeter. You need to verify that when you show up on site.
Yeah, so like we say in our classes, right? The passive surveillance is used. You do passive surveillance in the beginning, which is like OSN, right,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And then you validate that when you're doing your active surveillance,
Yeah.
right? So it always becomes the first time you see the facility should not be the first time you're actually looking at it, right?
Yeah.
You should have a general good lay of the land. You should know what restaurants are around, right?
Yeah.
You should know because you might interface with people,
Yeah.
especially during daytime entry.
Yeah.
And you might be working
You
with
want to know who their internet provider is.
right,
You wanna
or
know
someone
who-
might ask you a question about like the local area, right?
Yeah.
It was just like I remember I got asked a question. I was in a state that was like transitioning to no bags at grocery stores.
Yeah.
And someone asked me, "Hey, do you know if this grocery store uses bags? Like, do they still give out bags for free?"
Yeah.
And my answer could have been like, "Oh, I don't shop there," and blah blah blah. And luckily the night before I actually went there, but I knew that was the grocery store,
Yeah.
right? They didn't say like this grocery store. They said, "Hey, do you know if Fry's still gives out bags?"
Yeah.
And if you're just a nerd, you're like, Fry's Electronics.
Yeah.
That hasn't been around for years, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're just like, what are you talking about? There's a Fry's here, and now it's just like, yeah, you don't fit in around here, do you? It's just
Yeah.
like, but now it's just like, yeah, they did. I went there last night, right?
Yeah.
And even without knowing that, you can just say like, you don't have to be confused. You don't have to have that moment of like
Yeah.
embarrassing yourself by just looking up the local
Yeah.
store and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did one engagement where there was a cemetery near the target facility.
Oh,
So like we wanted to do CTR, like pull in to the parking lot, like past the gate
Mhm.
and like see what was there. Because this was a very hard facility to case because like it was literally just on the side of a highway and like there was
mhm.
nowhere we could stake out. So like what one of my coworkers drove in with a hidden camera and like drove around trying to like made it look like they were lost and trying to turn around. And their pretext was if they got stopped, they would say, "Oh, and they had flowers like on the
Oh yeah,
dash."
uh-huh.
And the pretext was, "Oh, I'm here to pay respects to someone who died recently. Can you show me where the cemetery is?" And we actually went to the website for the cemetery, found someone who was buried there,
Yep.
and like was buried at a date close enough to when we were doing this where it would make sense that someone would show up to pay respects. And like we did OSINT on the person who died to come up with like things about them if in case it ever got that far.
Yep.
Like there's this in the movie Argo, there's this great scene where one of the people they have to smuggle out says, "Do you really think your funny cover story is going to hold up when there's a gun to my head?" And he responds, "My funny looking cover story is the only thing that's going to keep a gun from your head."
Right. Yeah.
Like you need your pretext to speak for you. Like you want, your persona, your props to sell your pretext to the point where like people don't feel the need to ask you any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best pretexts are the ones that make it where you don't even have to talk to anyone.
Yeah, you belong.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for tuning in to Red Team Radio. Don't forget to like this episode, hit subscribe, and follow for more. Craving extra Red Team Radio exclusives? Dive deeper at redteamradio.net and click support for early episode releases and members-only content. Join us twice a month as we continue to unveil the unseen in the Red Team Chronicles. Remain vigilant and do not cease to be curious.